Hi everyone, my name is Julian Leon and I am an energy educator with the Vermont Energy Education Program, or VEEP. Thank you for joining us for our community workshop series. We have a series of different workshops dealing with energies for the consumer market. This morning's workshop was known as Home Heat Transfer, looking at the science of heat energy and how it applies to the insulation and ceiling of your home. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. My name is Julian Leon, and I'm an energy educator with VEEP, the Vermont Energy Education Program. And in case you're wondering, I have an awesome job. I get to go all throughout Vermont and New Hampshire, work with students and communities on energy workshops. And we usually focus on the three, I like to call it the consumer energies. We look at electricity use, we look at home heating, and we look at transportation. So the one that we're going to start off with today is about home heating. With me, I have some colleagues in the room. I have Andy over here from VEEP and Sophia, my boss, so please get me looking good. And we also have some people in the professional community that have joined us today. We have Connor over here and Whit, and Brent is in the corner over there. You can't see them on camera, but very handsome people. And they're all looking really good. All right, so this workshop today is called Home Heat Transfer. And just be aware, we're going to look at the science of heat transfer. It's my personal view that if you understand the science of things, then you have a better grasp on the technology that comes from the science. Science just defines the rules of nature. Technology makes them applicable to the needs of humankind. So that's what we're going to do. And hopefully, when you do the hands-on materials that you see I have around you, you'll have a better grasp on the different science behind the technologies. So one of the things we're going to look at is how can we use less energy to heat our homes, yet still keep them warm in winter? We live in New England. We know we have to heat our homes. We got to pay for heat. So how can we pay less or use less energy and still keep nice and warm and toasty? So 3 types of heat transfer. Who remembers from high school science? What are the 3? They all end in ION.
Conduction, convection, and something.
Conduction, convection,
Radiation.
and radiation. Those are the 3 ways heat travels. We have the conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction is the movement of energy when things are touching. I like to look at it from the point of view of the molecule. The molecules stay in place, they just jiggle faster or jiggle slower. Convection is the movement of energy through fluid material, like water or air, where how many people have said hot air rises? Yeah, it always rises. My favorite example of convection is inside the earth, in the mantle. The molten rock is also moving in convection currents. That's why we got the little shaking we had yesterday. I don't know if anybody felt it. I did. I was very excited. So anyway, we get that movement. Now the molecules are moving. Now the molecules are moving. Conduction, they kind of stay in place. They touch the next one. They get the next one shaking. This one, the molecules are moving. And radiation, transferred by waves or radiation, no molecules needed. No molecules involved. That's how we get our energy from the sun. It goes through the vacuum of space. So we don't have any molecules there. And it's a pretty good example here. Conduction, you're touching the hot handle, convection inside the water, and radiation going out to the side. The basic rule of heat energy transfer is that energy is transferred from an area of higher temperature to an area of lower temperature. Always. Higher temperature to lower temperature. You can't stop it. You can only slow it down or speed it up. There's 2 things you might want to speed it up. I know it seems weird. We'll talk about that later. All right, so I have a little demonstration up here. And before I do that, I would like to, sorry, gotta move. Maybe Sophia, maybe you can help me. We're gonna hand out some clipboards for you so you can do the worksheets and write stuff down. And please, the energy professionals, since we don't have too many people, get a clipboard. We're going back to school. Thank you. Do we have enough? Oh, Connor? Yeah?
Perfect.
Okay. So the clip might be on there, but please, there's a spot for your name. So put your name, date, social security number, Netflix password. When I do this in schools, I say Minecraft or Fortnite password. Hey, you can have my bank account, but you can't have that. All right. So our first demonstration, talking about heat energy transfer and the things we just talked about. I do need someone to help me up here. Can I get a volunteer to help me? Oh, someone else. I saw you raise your hand, so thank you. All right. So maybe if you can put the clipboard on the table, I can put it around the table here, and come around back if you would. And so if you notice, I have two black blocks here. Block A, which is on my side, and block B, which is on the other side. Could you please take the thermometer, put it right on the blocks, and pull the trigger, and tell me the temperature of block A, please?
68.6.
Thank you. And block B, please.
The exact same.
Maybe try it again.
Oh, do I?
Wait, yeah, you can kind of reset it. Or hold it for a second while you do it. Huh,
It's
interesting.
staying the same.
68.6 and 68.4. So let's see.
It changed, I swear.
Ooh, 64.1. It is changing, but they're about the same temperature. Would you agree? Pretty close for that. Now, please put a hand on each one. Yep. And please tell everybody what you feel.
Oh, this feels cooler to me.
Okay. And A, how does A feel?
Like the same temperature as my hand. Or I mean, I don't sense any difference.
So kind of room temperature
Yeah,
or
yeah,
ambient
yeah.
temperature, but B definitely feels colder.
Yes.
Yeah.
It definitely does.
Okay, and I think B might have been a little bit colder with the thermometer, but just a hair. So I'm going to put an ice cube on each one. Would you agree that the ice cubes will eventually melt in this room? All right. Will they melt at the same rate? And what's your name? I'm sorry.
Oh, Linda.
Linda, do you think they'll melt at the same rate?
I kind of do because they're both exposed to the same room temperature.
Okay.
And it seemed like the difference in temperature was not that much. So.
All right, so you're saying the same rate. There's a little spot on your worksheet, and I didn't leave a spot for the same rate. So if you think the ice cubes are going to melt faster on one than the other, please put a check. And A is the one closer to me, which Linda said felt ambient or room temperature, and B, which she said felt definitely cold or cool to the touch. And which one? So you think the same rate. Anybody else want to put their opinion out there? Which one might melt faster? How many people say A will melt faster? That's one closer to me, the one that felt room temperature. How many people say B? How many people are uncommitted? All right, well, we'll see what happens. Let's see. So I'm going to just put these rings on there so it doesn't dribble all over the table. And I'm going to try to get two basically equal-sized ice cubes from here. Are we on that? Are we on the blocks? All right, here we go. Now, can everybody see? Get out of the way. What do you notice, Linda?
Well, I can definitely see a lot of melting on B. A lot of melting, and there's some melting on A. Like I think, but it's very hard to see.
Yeah, but one is definitely melting faster.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
B. Now, I know you guys said B. Why did you say B? It felt colder. It was just a guess.
Or heater, or whatever that is.
I'm sorry?
Oh, you're thinking.
Oh, because it was closer to a heating source. Interesting. I didn't think about that.
Oh, there's one here too.
Oh, that is true. We're balanced.
That's trickery.
Internal.
All right.
trickery.
So let's look at these situations. First of all, Linda, do you believe that these are the same materials?
Well, I don't know.
So
Because this one was so much colder. I
Yeah.
was wondering if there was something different in it or under it or
Yeah,
something
and if
like
anybody can
that.
get a good look at that, B is really melting very quickly.
Yeah, it's coming off. It's melting on the table. Is that what this is for?
That was exactly what that's for. But yeah, so it's melting very quickly. And A, hardly any noticeable melting at all. Now let's think about what we did. Looking at heat energy transferring from a higher temperature to a lower temperature. So Linda, when you put your hands on the blocks, what was the higher temperature object, you or the blocks? At that moment, before I put the ice on. What was higher temperature, you or the two blocks that had been
Well,
sitting out?
presumably me.
Yes, I hope so.
You're still breathing, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these, I always tell students, a good zombie tester. So you were the warmer one. So heat energy is going to try to flow from you by conduction into the blocks. B felt colder. Does that mean more heat energy was going from your fingertips into the block or less than A if it feels colder?
More. But yeah.
More. So going in there. Now you put the ice cubes on top. At that point, the blocks are the warmer temperature and the ice is the cooler temperature. So by conduction, touching, the heat energy is going to go up and it's going to go faster from B. All right, Linda, final question. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. One of those blocks is foam board and one of them is aluminum. I'm wondering if maybe someone can help Linda out, of which block is which?
I think I would say the foam board is the one that's transferring less.
Does anybody
Or
concur?
that there's less heat transfer.
Ah, and you're absolutely correct, Linda. Thank you. You are. So A is foam board. The one closer to me is a piece of foam board, painted black, same size. B is aluminum. A, being a foam board, is a good insulator of heat energy transfer, so it slows it down. So when you touched, not much heat energy was being transferred from your fingertips to the block, so you sense room temperature, or it feels normal, or it feels like my temperature. The aluminum, when you touch the aluminum, the heat energy from your finger went very quickly into the aluminum. Then you feel it as cold. And the opposite is also true. The heat energy escaping the block would go into the ice cube much faster. There are certain times when you want to speed up heat transfer. I'm a fan of boxing, and I always notice in the corner of the boxing, they keep a bucket of ice with a smooth steel pad in there. And then when the boxers come down, they put that pad to reduce the swelling, this big thick piece of steel on there, because it draws out the heat. The heat energy transfers faster from the swollen tissue into the metal block. So that's what it would be there. A is more what we'd want in our homes, in the walls of our home, to kind of slow down that heat energy transfer. All right, thank you, Linda. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Yeah, well done. Well done. All right.
Okay.
Yes, please, Andy.
So have you ever noticed in your house, if you've got a tile floor and you're in your socks or barefoot, and you put a foot on the tile floor, it always feels colder than the wood floor or the carpet? Well, they're the same temperature sitting on the floor of your house. It's just one conducts the heat more. The tiles, like that metal block, and the carpet or the wood floor is like that insulating block. They're really the same temperature. It's just the rate of heat transfer from your foot is different.
Thank you, Andy. And another thing I like to point out, my family has installed radiant floor heating in the main living area of my home. And in the wintertime, I'm bare feet or socks most of the winter. And then I go to a friend's house where people take off their shoes, and you go in and they have stone floor or whatever. My feet are really cold, and I'm not used to that. So yeah, it can definitely, the heat energy transfer happens very quickly. Yes, please, Linda.
But I'm still puzzling out if both of the blocks, if the surface of both blocks were generally the same temperature, 60-ish, why is there a difference in the ice melting?
So in order for the ice to melt, heat has to be added to it. It's called change of phase. We're going from a solid to a liquid. It requires the introduction of more heat energy. So both those blocks, because of their room temperature, the heat energy is trying to go from the blocks into the cubes. Now, because of the actual makeup of the materials, that heat energy can either flow quickly or slowly. And with aluminum, we notice that it flows very quickly. So it's all going in. In a few minutes, if you guys like, before we move on to the station work, you can touch the block and you'll notice B is appreciably cooler right now because it's lost a lot of that heat energy.
So both ice cubes are going to melt. It's just one is going to melt way faster than the
Yes, It's true. It is true. And A is, yeah, I've actually had that for an hour and a half, and it's very little melting. But B should be gone by the time we get to the station work. Yeah. All right. So, get ready to do some hands-on science, everyone. We have 3 stations that are set up around the room. Station 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. They're identical stations, so you don't have to go to all 6. You just pick one side or the other. We're going to be looking at heat energy transfer with 2 of the heat energy transfer methods we talked about, conduction and convection. The first one, conduction, we're going to be testing 2 materials, felt and batting. And actually, I don't want to move, but could you hand me the white fluffy stuff right there behind the cardboard? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So sorry, I should have had this up here. So we're going to test these 2 for conduction. The way we do it, and if everybody just wants to look over to one of the stations, we have a piece of cardboard there. And on the piece of cardboard, you'll notice there are 2 aluminum plates next to it that have a silver side and a black side. Please make sure the black side is up, because these thermometers, all kinds of stuff. You don't want to do that. Okay, I can explain it. Yeah, you just give me that in the block. Sorry, thank you. Oh, I got one. All right. Apologies. It's hard for me to be on camera. Okay, so the way we've designed this experiment is there's 2 aluminum blocks. Thank you. There's 2 aluminum blocks. Pick the cooler one, the one that hasn't been just used, and put it in the center of the cardboard. The cardboard is a nice little insulator from the table. Then take the temperature using the IR thermometer and record the temperature. Then we're going to start with a felt. Put the felt on there, and there's a heating pad over there that's been warmed up for quite a few minutes now. It's nice and warm. Put that on top. There's a timer, 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, take the felt and the heating pad off and take the temperature. You're going to notice, hopefully, a different temperature there. Then do the subtraction. You're calculating how much the temperature rose. Then do it with the batting, but swap out, get the cooler block. Batting, forgot to take the temperature. Take the temperature. The batting, the heating pad for how long?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Take it right off and do it again. See what difference you notice with those. Station number 2 is the same idea, except we're going to be using a hairdryer. And the hairdryer is going to represent moving air molecules. There's a string on the hairdryer, and that's the distance you keep it. Again, taking the temperature first, we're going to start off with batting and the hairdryer. 3 minutes, take the temperature, subtract. Then we're going to try batting with a piece of clear plastic vinyl on top of the batting. Hairdryer, and notice the difference. When we're all done with this, we're going to check our numbers, our data, and then think about how this applies to the real world. Station number 3 has 2 parts. One is called ice, and this is all on your data sheets. Excuse me. You have 5 materials at the ice station. We have styrofoam, batting, mylar, bubble wrap, and reflective bubble wrap. And there's bags of ice in the coolers. So I'm going to ask you to, on a scale of 0 to 10, put the materials in your hand and put the bag of ice and say, okay, does it feel like there's no material there, or does it feel like I don't have any ice in my hand? You're going to make a qualitative judgment of where that fits on the scale and thinking about the heat energy flow. Just a little tactile thing. I don't think I have to worry with adults, but with students, there's bubble wrap there. And I know the temptation to pop it can be deafening. So do you think if I pop the bubbles, will it have the same insulating qualities?
No.
Probably not. So please. And station number 3, close-up materials, right near Andy. There we have loops, small little microscopes. Well, they're not really microscopes. They're magnifying glasses that are meant for close-up viewing. And we have 5 different real building materials. We have, am I missing some? Sorry, I'll find them. So we have fiberglass insulation, cellulose, blue board insulation. We should have reflective bubble wrap and reflective foam board. And I'm just going to ask you to look at those with the loop as close as you can, maybe sometimes get to the edge of it. And we also have microscopic photos of these 5 materials. See if you can match the material to the photo and see if you can see a similarity with all these different types of insulations, the thing that makes them a good insulator. And we're just going to rotate through the stations, and then we're going to find out, well, what everybody found out, and then see how it relates to the actual world, the technology of building material insulation. All right, any questions? No? All right, time to get busy, everyone. And 3, 2, 1, do that. Thank you guys, you're doing great.
70.4. We were on the in-between.
Than this, but it doesn't blow as much wind, so it's kind of easy to work with.
Can I see your data?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Kaleidoscope when I do that.
I find it helpful.
Is this a Delta T?
No, so
All right, we're getting ready for this experiment. And we have to get that.
1,875 watts. 1,875 watts. That's like an electric space heater.
Okay.
So yeah, we started.
I always look at it the night before. I just wanted to mix it up a little bit.
So energy, yeah. Energy and thorium was started going up that. That was
Would have to put this up to your eye. Yeah, and put this up. Too close. Bring it a little bit farther away. Can you see it? Ooh, can you see it? There you go. What do you see? Don't put your fingers. Put your fingers right there.
Not from outside.
Yeah.
How?
Very cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. We went through the stations. The most important question, was that fun? Yeah. Did you have fun? Okay, good. Second most important question, did you learn anything from the stations? Did you see it? Look at things from a different angle. All right, so I don't want to spend a ton of time reviewing, but let's just look at the stations. Station number 1, we did conduction, the heating pad, felt versus batting. Please check your data. Did you notice a difference? Yeah. And so instead of like which one's better, can someone please tell me how that would relate to building materials? What things that you might have seen would kind of relate to station number 1? Something a little thinner versus something a little thicker. Maybe I don't know where I'm going with this. I always think about the different types of fiberglass installations. There's different thicknesses, correct? And Connor, we do have different thicknesses of like the pink fiberglass insulation. And they would have different values for how well they slow down the thermal transfer. I don't know if this is a good time for you to talk about our values or if someone wants to talk about our values. But you might have to come up here.
Okay. I was going to focus more on air movement and air sealing, but yes, you're right. The R value to the. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yes, insulation is meant to reduce the heat transfer, the speed of the rate of it. That's where the R value comes from, and so the various materials that you were looking at all have different R values, abilities to affect that change and that delta T, the difference between the materials. And so through conduction and other these types that we were talking about, they affect in different methods. So the question you were asking was?
Well, the R values of different pink insulation, is it based on thickness?
So the thickness, it just it accumulates then, so obviously the thicker the material, it's going to hold the heat on one side and reduce that transfer even more. So it will, yeah, I think the houses kind of show a good example. If you have a thicker insulation on these walls, you're just going to hold that heat inside longer. Yeah.
Please.
Well, can I ask this question? So if you had felt that was, like you had enough layers of felt that they were equivalent in thickness to the batting, would the felt be just as good, or is there something different about the construction of the batting, like that it's, like it's looking to me kind of like it's got more air spaces in it. Is it just the thickness of the material, or is it something about how the material is designed?
That's a very interesting question. I've never tried that. So you're saying let's put enough felt layer so it has the same thickness as the batting.
Right.
And the pile of felt would be much more dense, right, and heavier. But would it do the same thing with the test? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have any ideas about that, Andy?
It's both. It's related both to the material and the thickness. So these two foams, these are the same thickness. This one insulates 1.5 times what this one does, because it's a difference in the composition of the foam. But mostly, if this has a resistance, the R stands for resistance to heat flow.
Right, yeah.
So the bigger the number, the better the resistance. So this has a resistance of about 5 units. Twice the thickness would be 10. 10 times would be 50.
Yep.
So it just, for a given material, the thicker you get, the better it is. But between different materials, it has to do with the material properties themselves.
That would be an interesting experiment, just to start adding layers of felt and see when you get the same temperature difference that you got with the batting. That's a really good idea. Thank you.
You could pretty well guess that more layers of that felt's going to do better, but inch for inch, the batting and the felt, don't know. You gotta try it.
Yeah.
So then you get into the cost of installation, right?
Absolutely. And a bunch of other
That's a
stuff.
great point.
So this one recycles newsprint. And it's
Feel free to
made
come
from
over here, Andy.
cardboard.
Yeah.
So this actually,
Yeah, show the camera.
this one, other properties are important too. This one is a recycled material. You're actually taking carbon and storing it in your building in this stuff.
right.
Whereas this emits a lot of carbon dioxide in its manufacture. So, there's a lot of consideration.
Yeah.
This building, I was the energy consultant on the renovation of this building, and we were having to decide were we going to use spray foam, the kind they spray on, or cellulose, because much more environmentally friendly. It's reversible from a historic preservation point of view. It doesn't stick to the brick. And there was a long conversation, which is, I won't relate it all here, but they were looking at historic, we were looking at embodied carbon, we were also energy and cost. So there's a whole bunch of factors that you want to consider when you look at different materials.
What'd you go with?
Well said.
It was a committee. It was your committee earlier. You're the energy commission. So there were the historic preservation folks and the energy folks. And the energy folks wanted spray foam. Actually, less money, more insulation value. The historic people wanted cellulose. It's cellulose in the roof and spray foam in the walls.
Can I ask you another
There
question?
you go.
Yeah.
What recently came out about spray foam and health impacts? Was there a reason why we shouldn't be using that anymore?
I'll try to give you a short answer to a big question. Spray foam, you're doing chemistry on site. You're mixing two chemicals. They have to be mixed precisely in the right ratios and the right temperatures, in the right conditions, by the right applicator, with the right training and the right equipment. If you could check all those boxes, it usually comes out pretty well. You miss one or two of those and you could get issues, which could be off-gassing, it could be the foam doesn't stick well, it could be it shrinks. So that's kind of the deal with spray foam. Also, the embodied energy in the spray foam is quite high, and there's a blowing agent, the stuff that makes the bubbles, makes it. That stuff eventually leaks out, and it's got a pretty high global warming potential.
It has gotten better.
It's gotten better. It's gotten about half of what it used to be, or a third. But it used to be like this, and now it's like this, and cellulose is actually zero and better because it's storing carbon. So, because this isn't going into the landfill where it'll decay and the CO2 will eventually get into the atmosphere.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a short answer to a long question.
I have more questions about the cellulose at some point, but I digress for now.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Pass
yeah,
this on.
right.
Yeah. Come back.
Okay, so in the second one, well, I might just call Connor right back up. But anyway, the second one, we looked at convection. We looked at moving air. And I think most of you noticed that having that layer of vinyl on top of the batting really did do a great job to keep that heat energy transfer to a minimum. And I think relating that to the real world or home buildings and stuff like that, we look at the insulation and we also look at maybe some type of a house wrap around the building to try to cut the wind. It wouldn't be vinyl on the outside. It would be a little bit more breathable material, but something like that. And I know, I don't know about you guys, but I know there's still a lot of houses in my neighborhood where I think they're just going to stay with the house wrap because they haven't changed it in years. You can see the big Tyvek on the side, but they'll put that around there. So it does help to help break the wind coming through. So definitely you can see the difference with the testing. And then the last two stations, we did the bag of ice in the hand and noticing the different things. And the question I always get is the Mylar. And I was like, this is useless. It almost feels colder than not having something. But when I was a kid, this is the thing they would sell called space blanket. You would buy it in the museum gift shops and you get this space blanket. And more schools I go into, they have emergency kits hanging on the wall. And they're like, yeah, we got 3 right here. And we have a big discussion. And so what's the advantage of Mylar? I mean, obviously the touching, the conduction doesn't work very well.
Just cuts the wind and keeps
So,
rain out.
yeah, so if you're out, if you're in a situation where someone's getting cold, they're getting a little hypothermic, and you put the Mylar around them, how does that work? Well, being the shiny material, the radiation gets bounced back to the person quite a bit. It's low cost, low weight, low volume, and it's definitely better than nothing. So they always say, wrap it around you, try not to lean on anything, just keep it wrapped around you, and it will help. It will help there. So it is a material.
And it's also good for convection because it blocks the wind from getting to your body.
True, yes. It has that, blocks that wind going through. So that's why we put the Mylar out there, so people are aware of it. And they go like that. And then looking through the loops at all the different materials, did you notice something new?
It was pretty much for novices, a big yes.
So one of the important aspects of that we try to show is in the physical structure of all insulations, and you probably knew this already, was these little air spaces, little gaps, little places where air can be trapped. And that really helps with the insulation. But you try to stay away from large air spaces because that's where you can get a convection current in there and it won't work as well. I renovated a building in Chicago. Well, I helped rip out the walls, and if anybody's ripped out walls from old buildings, you get all kinds of stuff coming out of the walls. Newspaper, shoes, brushes and stuff, bricks. Yeah, they put stuff in there because I guess even back then they knew if we just have this long air column, it's not gonna work very well for insulating. So you got to put something in there to kind of trap the air, prevent it from getting into a convection current. So yeah, so they all have these little air spaces in there. I'm not going to go through them. I don't know if anybody wants the letters, but so hopefully it kind of opened your eyes to that. And I believe there's probably a lot of other aspects to insulation you got to think about: flammability, cost, materials, mold issues, things like that. I know the pink fiberglass is inexpensive and flame resistant, right? So it doesn't really catch fire. Yeah, and it's still, I think, one of the more economical ways of insulating. But we can talk about that when we go over to the professionals again. All right, so I have a question for you. I want you to put yourself back in the point where you were going to college and you are looking at an apartment off campus. The landlord shows you these 4 units. They're all available. You're in charge of the heating bill. Let's assume that these 4 units have the thermostat set to the same temperature on the inside. Would you choose one over another if you were concerned about how much money you had for the semester and having to pay for heating, and which one might you choose? Think it through, then check with a neighbor. Say, which one would you choose?
Yeah, I don't know. How could there be differences among them?
Let's discuss that.
Yeah.
All right, would anybody like to volunteer an answer?
Is 17 a side unit and end unit?
That's a very good question. I wish we had the rest of the photo. I'm going to say let's assume there's more units going down, but 23 is an end unit. So which one do you think you might choose if your main concern was cost of heating? And assuming all thermostats are set at the same level, 68 degrees right across the board. Do you have an idea which one you might choose?
Well, 17 is the obvious choice
Please, why?
because there's snow on the roof, which means it's most likely insulated better than the other units. At least the roof is.
Was that other people thinking as well? Yeah. So I am a little bit of an energy nerd. Whenever we get snowfalls like this, I drive around the neighborhood. And I've been debating whether I should tell my neighbor, you always have this circle of melted snow right in the middle of your roof. Something's going on underneath there, or maybe you just need another layer of insulation right there, but it's always in the same spot. So I always kind of look at people's roofs and think about where that heat energy is going. Yeah, 19, you don't want to pay to melt the snow. So no, there must be something going on with the insulation in 19. And some people say 23 also, and then I have very astute students say, but that's an end unit, so you have more walls exposed to the elements. It's like, good thinking. Yeah, because heating is no joke with the cost. It really isn't. My wife and I rented an apartment in Ludlow. We loved it when we saw it in the summer. We loved it. It was 2 floors, much more room than we needed, big windows like this, but not this quality window. And the landlord was very upfront. He's like, you're in charge of the heating bill, and it's going to be substantial. It's propane. And I think the first bill came, it was close to $3,000, and the next bill came 2 months, as it's like bi-monthly. I think we ended up paying like $10,000 in heating costs for that 1 year. And I was like, oh, and it was like, yeah, I told you. I was like, ooh. So we didn't think, I should have had this workshop. I never did this workshop before that. Yeah, we should have thought that through. So, yes, definitely something like that.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I'm looking at 17 and I happen to know because I did some, people teach me about things, but I think that's the cap at the top. You know, when you have 2 roofs come together, there's a little cap piece.
Oh, right here?
Yeah. So I see.
Oh, ridge guard? Yeah.
Ridge
Yeah, ridge cap.
So that is probably leaking some energy right there.
I think it's actually designed to do that, isn't
Yeah,
it?
there's
Letting a
some
little
ventilation there.
ventilation from. I know in when they put my new roof on, it's like a foam they put, right, or like a. It's like a Brillo pad, not Brillo pad, like a sponge pad,
Yeah.
to get air that allows air to leave there slowly, right? Yeah.
It's so the moisture doesn't build up in your attic. And in the summer, it lets some of the heat out too.
Yeah, it's true. All right.
I was just going to point out that look at the time and everything. Just you want nice southern light, ideally, because that can be also a heat creator for you. So I think depends on the time of day. It looks west, yeah. So that unit on the far end or the north end is going to be colder usually on those sides. So that's something to consider. In your home, the placement of the house.
That is a good point. All right. So I'm a little concerned about time. Normally, for this one, which is your last sheet, I would have people diagram their heating system and distribution of their homes. I believe that you guys are very familiar with your heating system and distribution in your homes. A middle school student isn't. And when I do this in middle schools, we send this home for homework. And they're just like, I had no idea. You know, because they don't pay for it. And I think about when I was 13 years old. I wouldn't have noticed it. But there is heat generating, and then the distribution of the heat throughout the homes. And we talk, and I say, okay, but let's just go for a quick poll. How many people here have a fuel oil that is used for their heating of their homes? None?
I have it, but I don't use it very
Ah,
much. I
okay.
have multiple systems.
Most people do, yeah. How about propane? Anybody heating with propane here?
Occasionally. When
A
the
little
power
bit?
goes out.
Wood? Wood?
When the power goes out.
Electricity. So heat pumps or resistance heat. And which one am I forgetting? Have I forgotten any?
Boiler.
Nuclear.
So that's the next thing I was going to do. How many people have a boiler where water is heated and sent around? And usually I tell students, like, I don't know. I was like, do you have something in the corner that goes ding, 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 ding? And like, yeah. So you have a boiler. And how many people have a furnace where it's warm air going through? There's vents in the floor or on the walls. Yeah, so all those need to be heated with some type of fuel. So it could be burning fuel oil, it could be burning propane, it could be burning wood. I myself have a wood pellet boiler, which is not very common, but I have a wood pellet boiler, and it works very well.
I have many questions for you. I have an oil boiler right now, and I'm trying to figure out, do I do like geothermal, or do I do some other kind of boiler? Or,
Ooh.
So over lunch, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna recommend that we have a little chat up over lunch, and maybe Andy and Connor might be better for that, because I went one way. I don't know if I do it again, maybe because of the heat pump technology that's out there, but always would have, could have, should have, right? All right.
Where do you store your pellets?
In a big hopper in my garage. So we got bulk pellet delivery.
Do you have any concern about CO release from pellet storage?
I hope not. Actually, I have a CO2 meter. Maybe I should put it in my garage and see what it does. But it's a pretty sealed bag, so I don't think a lot of.
It's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, yeah.
How big is your tank?
My hopper is 9 tons, so it's yeah. It takes up a little spot. We don't park the car there anymore. All right. Actually, no. All right, because of time. So we've compiled this information about where heat gets out of your home, where it does the most rapid transfer of heat energy from interior to exterior. So in an old house, you can see, and can everybody, I don't know if you can see the numbers very well. Would it help if I turn off the lights? Pardon me, please.
You're just looking at how fat the arrows are.
Yeah. So we looked at 3 houses, an old house, a weatherized old house, and a net zero ready house. And you'll notice most of it is air leaks, which is this purplish pink color. Most air leaks around ductwork, around windows. I know I have a front door that even when I close it, I can see a little bit of light coming through. So in desperate need of some weather stripping around there. The second one is windows, the blue. And the gray ones are walls, going through walls, and then ceilings, roof, ground, and doors. So you can see where all this goes out. Again, you can't stop it, but you can slow it down. You can look at different things, for example, like Connor has over there, different ways of addressing this, because this is all energy that's going out, and it's energy you're paying for. And it's going to go out. But if you can slow it down, then maybe you can save some bucks each heating season. Weatherized, you can see how everything drops off, gets smaller. Looking, as Connor's going to explain in just a minute, how do we look for it. And a net zero ready house, which I'm not too familiar with, I've been inside one, designed to be super efficient. And if it's done correctly, you don't pay for heating or electricity because you generate the electricity that would keep you warm and your electricity needs throughout the year. It has a whole different system for air exchange. All right. Sorry. Last thing I want to say, and you guys can look at it from your seat or come up closer. In the past, when we did this workshop, we used model homes similar to these. We would pour hot water down the chimney into a cup and had temperature probes in each one. Then we would monitor the temperature for 2 hours. We found that it wasn't very feasible because of timing in classrooms, and we developed these exercises, these activities, which I think are really great, but we always bring these in. So my question for you, and it's on the last page of your data sheets here, which color chimney house made which graph on here? So I'm going to invite you to come on up if you want, take a good look at it. You'll notice there's differences.
And the graph, explain the graph.
So the graph is temperature.
Losing the least.
Say that again, please.
Well, D is retaining, like the hot water stays warm in D.
So this axis right here is the temperature. The temperature probe was picking up. So A got to the highest temperature, which is about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. D only got up to about 90 some odd degrees. And then as time went on, because these heat sources weren't replenished or being heated again, they would all trail off. And this is time on this axis.
Where was the thermometer?
It was put right on the end wall of them. So please come on up, take a look at them, walk around. and see if you can decide which one's which. Okay, well, that one's right.
Make that house fall apart.
Yeah, please come and look. And these were designed to represent different aspects of real home design.
See, to me, this looks the same as that one.
I notice these are all new, meant to be like the ones we use. These were never used. Because these are brand new, they fit smaller stuff, which is really nice. But they don't, the old ones I had the hole where the temperature probe was and stuff like that.
Down the chimney into the water.
That's, I've never done this experiment. I was told how it was done. Yeah.
Well, when we designed it, it was
Yeah.
surprising when you say it was into space, because it's easy to just drop it in the water.
Right.
And then you get bigger temperatures. I guess all that really do is change the scale of the axis.
Yeah, because the old ones I had a little hole that I thought that's where the temperature probe went in. Okay, maybe I'll.
Well, that was a revision somebody did, not sure
Yeah.
if it's better or worse.
Yeah, I just never did it, and I guess the time needed to do it is just not feasible in most middle school schedules.
You can see what's going on.
But you know, from
We
a
would,
classroom
when I did
management
that,
point of view.
I would start with this and say, we're gonna start and might just let this go. And just leave the live graph on the screen and then do the other stuff and then
Go back and
So this
that's
one
cool.
has the
Yeah,
venting,
that is cool.
no insulation but venting. This one has no venting, no insulation. So
And so this is
So
something
let's
I've
put
been
that
The
saying.
smaller box would look better. If it has more surface
no
area per
insulation
volume,
venting,
it should
no insulation
lose it quicker.
venting,
Oh, they're moving houses now.
insulation, no venting, and then insulation
They
venting.
refresh.
Right? But then like,
Oh my god, I don't
That's a,
I think.
How was rain
Right?
Nice.
But
But this is just thermal.
this is just about thermal rather than like.
Is this your answer?
Yeah.
Do you know what we did?
So A, B, C, D?
Oh, is it?
A starts on
Yeah.
this side.
So from what I've heard with other educators, because I personally have never done this experiment, it was done before I joined Veep, and then we switched over to this more station aspect, but we thought it was really good to keep it so students can visualize and see it. These air gaps right here, and they were just like, why would someone make a slit in their walls? And I was like, well, you'd be surprised. Around some ductwork or whatever in the basement, it's just to represent air leaks and different types of insulation. They say, oh, well, these two aren't insulated. I always say, careful, cardboard is not a bad insulator. It really isn't. As a bartender working weddings in the hot summer, I bring the cases of white wine out from the refrigerator and I leave them in the box before they're ready to come up there because it'll stay cooler in that box unless I put it on the table and they warm up rather quickly. So anyway, doing all this stuff, setting it up, and I think you guys are spot on. A, thicker insulation, tightly sealed, would be the yellow chimney. D, thinner insulation, lots of air gaps, lots of air leaks would be D. And from what I heard, and I always want to check with Andy about this, what I've heard for people who did this was B and C were always very close. And sometimes they would switch. So I tell students it can be either one for that one. Tightly sealed, thinly insulated versus thicker insulation with air leaks. They're very close to each other. And please correct me on this if I'm wrong. A lot of people looking at their house, they're saying my house is just a horrible. I spend so much on heating. They start looking at big ticket items, windows, re-insulating, blowing in new cellulose into the walls, where some people might suggest there are lower cost options and you might get the same results. Am I on the right track with that? With weather stripping and the great stuff, spray foam and stuff like that. But the wonderful thing is we have great companies that check all this stuff out. They can do it for you. They can do a home energy audit and figure out what would be the best thing. Making an investment now to try to use less energy in your homes, but still stay nice and warm and toasty and thinking ahead. So I would like to give it up to you now, if it's all right. And I'll give you this wonderful microphone. And I don't know if this helps, maybe reintroduce yourself and your
Yes,
company.
all right,
So,
yeah, hi.
Thank you.
I'm Connor Teal, and I'm a medical member right now, serving at Cover Home Repair right down the road. And so I am a weatherization and home repair assistant. And so during part of the season, we're doing or weatherizing homes, and other times we're doing urgent repairs, trying to make accessibility improvements as well. And as it was a good segue here about the convection with the gaps in these structures here versus insulation. So what we do is pretty basic level, trying to go in for a day and see what we can seal, because we find that is the greatest impact in the shortest amount of time. And so what we're mostly trying to address is the stack effect. And so we can go in a little bit deeper here about building pressures, and so we have outdoor pressure versus the inside pressure. And so air is that flow, is from going from a high pressure to a low pressure. And so it's generally low pressure down below, and then with heat added, it will rise up to the top. And so if we can try and keep the air where your living space is, that's the ideal. And so you're creating a pocket up here in your attic with insulation, a heavy amount right here, trying to contain that stack effect from happening. And so when you have gaps in your walls and such, that's all places. Is there a way we can go back to that other slide? That was a good
Of course, which one?
example. The one with the house, as that
The house
should.
dumpster?
That one, yeah, thank you. So as you can see, there's various points where leaks happen, and so we're trying to plug them, and these two things are like our go-to tools. And so for a little larger gaps, we will try and address it here. At a certain point, it's good to use the foam board or other hard surfaces to kind of contain those gaps. But we try and go for the bigger gaps first, and then we can kind of do smaller gaps with the caulking gun here. And we're trying to find places, they're called bypasses. So it's those areas where these gaps have coming into the house. We're trying to address the exterior generally first, air penetrations, which could be plumbing, electrical cords and things like that. There could be gaps around doors and windows, and so we might we'll put door gaskets. I didn't bring any today, but that's something we install. You'll see gaps between your doors. Those are good to grab, or seal rather. And we have a tendency where how do we find these leaks, And so that's why we use a blower door. And it's kind of over here. I don't know if you want to take a look, but that is what we put into usually the main entry door. And what we're doing, again, going back to pressure, we are depressurizing the house. So we're sucking air out and from inside outside. And in that process, the high pressure from outside is now coming into the low pressure inside. So you can feel the air, the cold air, where all the leaks are. And so when we can see that, you can use a thermal gun to kind of spot it, but even just with your hands, you can feel it while the fan's going. And while that's running, there's certain parameters to follow. We have the manometer over there. That's what we use to, first, it's about relative pressure. So we're finding out what outside pressure is. We can kind of find the calculation and compare it to what that flow is happening. And so then we can do our fixes and then run the test again, and then we can find the difference of how we've done. But there's a lot of complex calculations kind of happening in that process, but generally that's what's happening. So is there any questions so far about that? Go ahead.
What does the board or desk cost?
Say
What
again?
does it cost?
Ooh, The actual machine, the setup, or just how to get one done. So Julian mentioned an energy audit. Those tend to be in the hundreds, so like 500 to 800 in that range. But you're getting a full report. You're getting this whole analysis of the level of insulation in your home, those air gaps, because they'll bring the blower door as well to find out what's happening, and they'll essentially make a roadmap for how to get your house to kind of that zone. Mainly here, it's a little more difficult to get to that level, but if you make the investment, it'll pay off eventually. But and for us, we're kind of addressing this area. We can only really do the air leaks, and just that's our focus, and it again, it's kind of the main source of that heat loss. And it tends to be for a general house of basketball size. That's how much your house is generally leaking. It all depends, but yeah, that's what we're trying to reduce. And yeah, we're also trying to balance two other things. The moisture in your home too. If you make it really tight, you're trapping moisture as well. So there's a kind of a balance you're trying to find. But generally, the housing stock here, older houses, we don't have to worry about too much. There's enough leaks where whatever we do, we'll probably get maybe a 15% reduction, in air leaks, 10 to 15. And that's just using these tools, so that adds up, instead of, so before, I would say the very first thing you would want to do is conservation. So if you can throw your thermostat down a little bit, that makes a big difference. And what else could you do? You could, just keep the thermostat is a big one, trying to just how much your heating system is on. Reduce that. And then the second part would be to probably seal these air leaks. Your windows, again, very large investment, so that tends to be on the later side of things. I can grab that this is an example of something we do for our clients, is we build these interior storm windows. These will go sit right inside the frame of your home. They make a nice seal. If you have older, especially metal, aluminum windows, they just don't sit, the gaskets don't sit very well. That's just air shooting right out, heated air. So yeah, this makes a nice insert. You can pull this in and out and store it as needed, so you can open the window. But
Has plastic on both sides?
It does, yes, which is a good point because, again, air pocket inside. You want to add some insulative value, not a terrible much, but quite a bit, because the radiation from the sun comes in, heats this inside space, and it holds it for a little bit longer.
Does that cover?
We built these, yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, these are the same thing, they're window dressers style.
That's
as well,
right.
so-
It's based on that design.
They made them at cover.
We do, yeah. It's not our main. Whenever we do a weatherization, we take a look at that as something part of the package, I guess. Window Dressers is a company that builds them too.
If you use an auditor that's part of Efficiency Vermont's, what do they call it, Energy Excellence Network, that are certified by them, then you're eligible for incentives from them. So when you reduce the air leakage in your home, you'll get some money back from Efficiency Vermont.
Yes.
When you add insulation, you'll get some money back from them. It's going to cover a fraction of it. It helps, but it's not like half or 2/3. But it can be significant. And the lower your income, the more that they'll help with that.
So to repeat that, Andy was mentioning Efficiency Vermont has a lot of rebates. That's a great source for finding those costs, to make those investments a little bit more manageable.
I believe there's a federal tax incentive at this point, $1,500 a year.
There are taxes. I don't know what it stands right now, but there's definitely federal tax incentives for doing weatherization to new heating systems, across the board. Solar as well, which I think we'll cover later. All right.
You want to introduce yourself very quickly?
Yeah. Julie, you want to take
Yeah, we
it?
got one more person. up here.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right.
My name is Brent Mellon. I'm with Building Energy. We are what's called a home performance contractor. So we do energy audits, weatherization, heat pumps, and solar all in-house. So just following up what he said. So we, for the weatherization part, we do participate with Efficiency Vermont's program for their rebates. And what the services we offer is generally starting with a home energy audit and then being able to make recommendations and provide costs to do the services. So we're mostly focusing on attics and basements from what you can see why from what you've learned so far today. And we're combining air sealing and insulation to really reduce the operating costs of the house and make it more comfortable. Also paying attention to moisture in basements and crawl spaces especially, and then combining some ventilation in there too, thinking about making sure there's air exchange in the house. Question? Yes.
How much do you charge for a home energy audit?
So we work exclusively in Vermont, and standard home is $400. There are additional fees after that if it's larger home or multiple heating systems, things like that. But typically,
And the audit will come with recommendations on this is where air is coming out, coming in, you need new windows, or just window dressers, or...
yeah, correct. So we sort of assess look at your energy use existing and sort of map out the house where it is now, and then have a work scope following that up that says, here's a number of things you can do. Some of them might be short term, some might be long term. Anything that we can do, we provide a cost for, and then provide a link to Efficiency Vermont's rebates as well and information.
Do you also estimate savings?
We have in the past. It depends on what I would say. 10 years ago, that was a big driver for what we saw, what people were asking for. More recently, it's really been more about comfort. Like, what's going to make us more comfortable? A lot of times, it's just, what do we have to do first? We can't do the attic when the basement is wet. So it doesn't matter if the attic's going to save more. The basement has to happen first because, you don't want to, if you do the attic and it traps moisture in the basement or more moisture in the house, then so that's really become more priorities in terms of comfort and health and safety.
So you don't work in New Hampshire?
We do not work in New Hampshire. Yeah.
You do C&I?
Sorry?
Commercial, industrial?
Sometimes. Depends. Yeah. We're mostly residential services, but yeah.
So we have 2 more people going to
Yeah,
speak.
so I have a couple more. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much. Yeah, cheers. So we have 2 more people who would like to introduce themselves to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Whit Merritt. I'm from Revision Energy. We are an ESOP B Corp based out of South Portland, but we have branches in New Hampshire, one in Brentwood, and one in Enfield. Enfield, we sort of dip into New Hampshire and Vermont, sticking kind of around the Lebanon area. So we're focused mainly on just electrification of homes and commercial spaces. So heat pumps, solar, ground mount solar. We do community solar, not in Vermont yet, but hopefully soon. Batteries and EV chargers. I don't think I said that yet. So yeah, I specifically work with customers looking at their home heating systems. If they have goals for energy storage and want to look at batteries, we offer right now SolarEdge and Tesla Powerwall batteries. And yeah, I'll take questions. I'm better at answering.
Do you install tracking systems yet?
We used to install tracking systems. We actually moved away from that because of the maintenance.
Right, but you've been reconsidering lately, but you haven't.
We have on our bigger community solar projects, we have the single plane trackers. That's what we've been going towards instead of the
Dual access.
Yeah, dual access. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, we're having another workshop in this room on home electrification. You're going to stick around for that one? Yeah. So we're having another one on home electrification, which is going to deal with exactly what has been saying about all these different things. So I'm wondering, I don't know if you can stick around, but maybe hold the questions after we do the hands-on stuff first, and then we can look at the questions over there.
Plus you can ask at lunchtime.
Or you can also ask at lunchtime. Yeah.
And I have a setup. I have stuff for heat pumps, and if you want to look at solar for your home, I can mock that up for you.
And one more brief announcement.
One more? Pardon me, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Pardon me, please.
No, that's okay. Hi. Actually, I think I know several of you in this room, but my name's Erica Hiller. I work at Vital Communities. One of the program areas that I work in is energy and climate, but I think a lot was already said that I don't need to repeat, and I am not specifically an energy expert per se, but like we work with a lot of town energy committees across the Upper Valley, both in New Hampshire and Vermont, and one of the things that I think is important to bring in this space too is, like, particularly in this particular region, there are a lot of older homes, as you all know, so it's not just about ourselves, but we're community members and see folks around the community that might have a very high energy burden. So I mean, it's tremendously expensive to heat your home, and a lot of these older houses, this older stock is quite leaky, and I just think it's important for us all as community members to remember that there are actual programs available to help people. So I know it costs quite a bit of money, several $100s for a home energy audit, and there are some folks that even that is a bit of a leap, but there are programs, and I have information outside too, and I just think it's great for everyone to know so that that word can spread, that there actually are free energy audits available for income qualifying folks, available through a lot of the and there are free weatherization programs as well, because I mean, there's a lot of folks living on a fixed income in older housing stock, and there are programs accessible to help do the weatherization work that needs to happen before you might then move into upgrades to your systems. So kind of in just spacing that out, but I'm happy to talk with anybody that's interested to learn more about some of those programs as well.
And you have great online resources.
We do put it all on, we do a big energy fair, and we have resources that we try to distribute across the region, and we try to keep our website updated, which probably needs updating, but always.
Pardon me, please. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, first, I'd like to thank the Hartford Energy Committee and everybody else who brought us in here, Dana and Laura. Thank you very much for bringing us in. Thanks to V-Light for sponsoring these workshops. And the one thing I can leave you with is we're talking about a lot of different changes here. People are looking at energy, trying to figure out ways to use less of it. I always recommend do your homework. And the homework might involve some of these wonderful experts. Bring them in. It takes some time. Do your homework. I've made mistakes in the past where I didn't do my homework, and now I'm thinking maybe I should have made different decisions when it comes to energy. But if you're looking at heating, you're looking at your electrical system, you're looking at transportation, do your homework. If that's one thing that's concerned, there's lots of information out there and a lot of different programs to take advantage of, and there's a lot of incentives, rebates, people willing to give you money to do stuff like this. So it just takes a little bit of legwork. But beyond that, I see we've reached our time, and I just want to say thank you guys very much for coming. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the workshop, guys. Thank you. The afternoon workshop is on home electrification. What does that actually mean? And what is the science behind this new technology of how we can electrify our homes? What are the advantages of home electrification? And a little bit about what are the costs and savings that you can expect with home electrification. So my name is Julian Leon, energy educator with the Vermont Energy Education Program, and thank you for attending our workshop on home electrification. We do this work throughout schools all throughout Vermont and New Hampshire, so help us spread the word, support the work we do, and help us keep the lights off. Thank you. So, home electrification. Well, let's jump right into it. What does that mean? Why might a homeowner want to do that? And what questions do you have? So at this point, we'd like your feedback. On the sticky notes that you have on the front, could you please do your best answer for these? And we're going to put them up over there on our driving questions board. So home electrification, what do you believe that it means? Why might a homeowner decide to pursue this type of work? And what questions do you have? So could everybody please take a few minutes and write the answers to that, and then at your leisure, please put them up on a driving question board. And I am usually just as long as nobody says in 5 minutes, what are we doing? Because this goes long. Can't slide. Wonderful.
All right, bring my chicken scratch.
These are great.
Are they good?
Yeah.
And we are collecting these. I have the ones from the last one I did. It was great to look at.
Are they better than the kids?
All right.
That's what-
So let's take a look. This is from Rewiring America, where to electrify everything in your home. I wonder if everybody can see it. So going in numerical order, on the orange, purchasing renewable energy. 2, the electrical service to your home. 3, which is the yellow one in the bottom left corner, heat pump, space heating and cooling. 4, heat pump water heater. 5, electric cooking. 6, electric clothes dryer. 7, electric vehicle. 8, EV chargers. 9, rooftop solar PV panels. And 10, home storage battery. So there's lots of components to all this, and I'm looking forward to reading yours of what is home electrification and why would anyone want to do this. And here are the basic components. Did we miss anything? Do you guys have anything that is not on this chart? I'm wondering.
I'm thinking that the rarest is the batteries, because not everybody's been able to make that step.
No, but if we look where we were 10 years ago with home battery storage and where we are now, it is definitely a trend that is happening. But all these have their positives for home electrification, their advantages, why people would do them. If you're looking at numbers, here's just a graph. We're going to get back to this graph towards the end of the workshop, but looking at heat. This is a comparison of the cost per million of British thermal units and the pounds of CO2 emitted, because most of the things we do with energy have a cost in pollution. And we have it on there. So you can kind of see electric resistance heat is very costly, whereas you get down to wood pellets, cordwood, and natural gas. And in the middle, electric heat pumps. And kind of somewhat in the opposite direction of the pounds of CO2 that they emit. So just some information for you, because like with anything we're going to talk about today, do your homework. Look into it. See what information you can find. But this is a hands-on workshop, and we're going to be standing up and moving around and getting to tinker with all the equipment. We have a lighting station. It looks at lighting, temperature and costs, and the energy bike, which is over there, where you can see the lights that are on. An appliance station, toaster versus router, right over there. We have our solar PV station, which is actually over here, where we're charging up capacitors, and we have a house that we can electrify with the capacitor. It's not actually a lithium-ion battery, it's a capacitor, but it's the same idea. And our heat pump station, which is right over here, looking at the science of water vapor evaporation and condensation, and a mini fridge section set up there. A lot of this we're going to be focusing on the science behind this technology. It's my belief that if you kind of understand the science, understand where it's going, it'll help you better to understand the technology and be more informed in the choices that you make. On your sheets right there are the actual instructions for each station. Please let us know if something is not clear. And I'm just going to ask you to peruse the stations, take down some data, note any observations or questions that you might have, And when everyone's done, we'll group back together and kind of do a recap of each station and how it applies to the overall idea of home electrification. Are there any questions before we embark? So please, the room is yours. Have fun. Make sure you try everything. Thinking about their vehicles, might not be thinking about.
Is it different? Resist. Oh, not the wires. This.
Yep. Yeah. That's
I got in touch with the relay. I had enough.
And then when you connect it to the house, or connect the house to the battery.
Let me know. I asked the question from the wrong.
That's so cool.
Almost to zero, that means.
Oh yeah. When I go to sell my place, a zero electric bill is nice.
And pumping it over to the condenser where it condenses, and when the vapor goes to liquid, loses heat.
Let's try 2 of those bulbs.
Yep.
Not bad. Okay. All right. So take temperature of the inside of both these cups. This is just an extra cup.
Be careful not
You can really put it like,
I'm gonna fix
pull the
this
trigger
up so
again to get another.
it's a lot easier.
All right. So this one's a little cooler. And that one. All right. Now,
And then let's see if we can light up the light on the house.
let's do this one first. Put it right on there and
Stored
pull the
electricity.
trigger and just watch it for a minute.
20 times more.
All right. Did you hook it up? Nice. And unfortunately, I had red LEDs, so it looks like. So what's happening, but it shows how they work and how they trap more energy. Well, thanks everybody. Was it fun? Did you have fun with this? We're always looking for suggestions and things that how we can improve it. So we'll talk about that at the end. But looking at all these different stations, stations were trying to combine the science plus the technology of different steps to home electrification that you could do. So first of all, did anybody? Well, I'd like to go through each one of these individually. Please let me know your thoughts or observations for each one of them. So the lighting station, we looked at the difference between incandescent bulbs and LED bulbs. The incandescent, right here, a lot of the energy, most of the energy, goes into generating heat. The basic science is if I put an electric current through a very thin wire and prevent that wire from burning out, it'll get hot. And things that get hot glow. That's the basics from 125 years ago from Thomas Alva Edison's patent for the incandescent light bulb that's been used for many, many years. The LED also transfers energy from electrical energy into light energy, but uses a different science. Uses a science of a junction where electrons jump from one side to the other given enough energy, but when they get to the other side, they have to shed some of that energy, and they shed it out as light. Really interesting science, and it's much more complicated than I just made it sound. But a lot more of that energy goes into light, and very little goes into heat. Did you get a big temperature difference from the two? Yeah, so the incandescent I think was over 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and the LED was about 100. So
just do it with your hand. You don't even need the.
Oh, yeah.
the
so
thermometer.
excuse this little anecdote, but my sister is 7 years older than me. And one Christmas, she got an Easy Bake Oven for Christmas. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that toy, Easy Bake Oven. And since she was 7 years older than me, she would force me to eat all those horrible brownies and cookies she made in this Easy Bake Oven because she was bigger. She's like, oh, try this, try this. And I was the kind of kid who took things apart. So one day she wasn't home and I took apart her Easy Bake Oven. And what did I find in there? An incandescent light bulb. A 100-watt incandescent light bulb was hot enough. I mean, 300 degrees, that's just about what you need, right, for baking. And it was hot enough to bake these horrible things that she made me eat. So The newer ones, the one I got my daughter, they don't use incandescent bulbs anymore. They use a resistance wire in there, a heating wire. So it's different now. Yeah. So it's a big difference. And with LEDs, you'll notice they're all plastic because they don't have to be glass and metal because it doesn't get that hot. Incandescent bulbs need to be glass and metal. They can't make them out of plastic. And LEDs usually have a plastic collar on it, and they last a really long time. Some of them are rated for over 20 years. Use for 3 hours a day, where many incandescent bulbs are rated for 1 to 2 years for that much. When I put a new bulb in, I like to write the month and the year in Sharpie on the collar and to see if it really lasts that long, and I haven't changed one yet, so I don't know if it does. I have one bulb that stays in my house on 24/7, and it's been about 4 years now. It's been chugging along. So anyway, definitely difference, and a lot of schools are also changing over. They're realizing if we change our lighting system, so the bulb we don't have in here, which you might have at home, looks like a corkscrew, a little curly bulb. That's a CFL, a compact fluorescent light. That uses a whole different science of a gas being excited, and so we don't bring those in. It's my personal belief that you probably won't see those bulbs much anymore. I've noticed in the hardware store and the supermarkets, less and less of those are available because the LEDs are so much more economical and they don't have to be disposed in a specific way because of the gas inside. But a lot of schools and municipal buildings and department stores still have the long fluorescent bulbs, and they're switching over. Are these LEDs, you think?
These are all LED fixtures.
These are all LED fixtures. They're realizing, electrify that part, change out the lighting, and you'll get a return on your investment. Your electric bill will drop. And Andy, do you have any idea what percentage of, like let's say a public school, of their electricity bill would be for lighting? I've always thought it was at least half.
Depending on what else they have, it could be, yeah.
Yeah, so lighting is always a large expense. And did you notice on the bicycle too? Yeah, so that's really good, especially with students like, whoa, that's a big difference. Yeah, because you are providing the energy. All right, please look at your sheets, or if you know, which one do you think was used more? Did you get a difference? So which one, toaster or the router? Toaster? And router? You got the router? Yeah. Toaster?
Well,
So-
instantaneously. It
Oh.
depends, yeah, you have to specify the time.
Exactly. The time that it's used, most definitely. So the toaster, depending on how many cycles you think you would use in a day, how many times you go down there, and the router is on 24/7. So there's definitely a difference there when you notice anything that heats uses a lot of energy. The wattage is very high. Toasters, clothes dryers, toaster ovens. So all depends how much you use it. So just to make the comparison that it's about time as well. A lot of things that you know that are plugged in are still drawing power even though you're not using them. It could be DVD players, televisions, things like that. They have electronics that we call it vampire current. It still sucks current, but it's not on. And so there are special power strips made for that can also cut it off. Just to be aware that all these things, and a lot of appliances have different degrees of how efficient they are. They have a Blue Star rating for some appliances, which might cost a little bit more, especially talking about a dryer, a washer, or refrigerator, but the energy use is lower overall. So you get your return on investment if it's something you're concerned with and it uses less energy. So do your homework, always do your homework.
Is there any difference of electric stoves between efficiency of electric stoves between?
I'm sure there are. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't really study that. The Energy Star for electric stoves and ranges.
As long as it's a resistance heat, or even the radiant stoves, which is essentially just radiant heat or resistance heat underneath the glass. Those are going to be pretty much the same. It's when you go to induction cooking, that's when it really drops.
Yeah, we got a slide for
Drop
that.
it by factor of 2.
Yeah.
It's much less energy.
So, but I think all brand new appliances you buy have energy labels on them about how much you would expect to use. All right, the solar PV station with battery backup model. That was over here, just a basic model to kind of show how it works. I think this would be a good time. Does anybody have questions about using all this? Do you install them, correct? Is that true, Brent?
Yeah, both, we do and both.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I don't know, does anybody else have questions about it? So I'm just wondering if it's better for you guys to get up here to get on camera. Yeah.
You should do one at a time.
Oh, would you?
Sure.
Okay.
See, I mean, I might need Brent's help here, but yeah. Anyone have questions?
Yeah, so the question I have is about the battery backup.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have solar panels to get a battery backup, right? You can just charge it off the grid.
You can, yes, you can charge it off the grid.
And
Yeah.
the advantage for that would be for power outages.
Mhm.
You have juice, right? Is anybody who's not, my solar panels are not hooked up to my meter. They're on a separate meter because they're further out in the field. That was closer to the thing. So it would never directly feed my battery backup. I'd have to feed the battery backup off the grid.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm wondering, what are the advantages of getting a battery backup besides power outages? Which, did anybody have one? I just had one this last storm.
You might need to. Because we actually don't, yeah.
Are you in New Hampshire or Vermont?
I'm in Vermont.
Vermont, okay. Yeah, I mean, so if you could do standalone battery backup that's not tied to solar, like you're describing, I mean, and then it's mostly, you know, the advantage is for power outages. If they're connected, you can do some load shifting, like you can program the battery to, you know, charge. I guess you could do that both ways. We always, most of the time, we're doing it with the solar, but you can, when the solar is connected to the battery, you can shift it so that you're storing power in the battery during the day, and then you're using power from that at night and not having to buy grid power. But with net metering, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't usually make as.
But I could. Sorry. So you could charge the battery during the day, where there's less of a load on the grid,
Yes.
and
yeah, you can
then
do that.
go off the battery at night until I need more electricity than the battery can provide?
Yeah, you can set it up that way
All
as
right.
well.
And is that
Usually-
a cost-efficient way of doing it?
Not with net metering, not so much, but some states it makes more sense to do that. But I think in your situation, for having the power separate from the solar is flowing into a separate meter than your house is being fed from, it's more of a backup situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And someone had told me that you can buy them outright or rent or lease them from Green Mountain Power, where they have access to that energy?
That's correct. Yeah, in
Please.
Vermont, in Green Mountain Power territory, I'm most familiar with Green Mountain Power. There may be other utilities that offer that as well, but Green Mountain Power has a couple different programs. One is the lease program, so you lease the power, and generally it's the Tesla Powerwall from them for a monthly. You can pay the lease off right up front, or you can do it monthly. And then they own the battery, they control the battery, and it's basically provided to you as a backup service, and they're using it to use it like for peak loads, so they don't have to buy as much from the power grid. They can pull from the batteries that are out distributed throughout. So that's one way to get backup power without having to put a big investment into it. The other one that they offer is called the Bring Your Own Device. So if you had invested in a battery system or want to invest in your own battery system, you can share that with them, and they can pull from that battery when they need extra capacity.
So you make some kind of a contract with them?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, can the same be done with an electric vehicle battery?
Yeah, mine does that. They have a special system. So if you have an electric car, you agree to only charge it during certain hours. And then the other hours you can override, but you're going to pay more. So they use that as like a storage so that people with the electric cars aren't charging during the peak.
Mm-hmm. I guess I was looking because those batteries in electric cars are bigger than that.
Yeah.
They're larger than the Powerwalls.
Yeah, they can use
Could I charge my house when the power went out from my electric car?
Yeah, the short answer is it's yes, you can at some point. I think there are some like you need a
F-150 Lightning.
Yes, I was just going to say that
Yeah.
there's some bidirectional. So it has to be a bidirectional charger that allows power flow to both ways. So that's coming. I mean, it's here. It's not. A lot of people don't have that yet, but we're going to see
EVs
more of
don't
that.
have it.
Yeah.
They don't, and you can't add it to it. It has to be factory installed.
It's much easier if it's factory installed.
Yeah,
I think it is.
because I was talking to my wife when the power went down 2 days ago, or whatever it was, that I was just like, wow, if we had that EV, could we, power our refrigerator and lights and our heating system?
One of the issues there is that a line person working on the line, if your house is still connected and it comes back up, they can get electrocuted by your battery
Oh,
if there aren't proper disconnects set up in the system.
okay. But it's out there. It could be done, right?
Could be done. Yeah,
Yeah.
New Hampshire Fire Code actually doesn't allow that. And for batteries in New Hampshire, we have to build a special room. Yeah, for under
Wait,
code.
say that again? So, in New Hampshire, fire code doesn't allow for bidirectional EV charging?
Vehicle to grid.
They don't allow for vehicle to.
Yes, currently. And fire code currently in New Hampshire requires any battery to be in a finished room. So either a finished garage space that has sheetrock, hardwired smoke detector, and then or you have an unfinished basement. You need to build a room around it with, again, the same thing: sheetrock and hardwire smoke detector.
Live for your dad, right?
Live for your die.
But in Vermont, they could.
In Vermont, it's
Yeah.
completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, I always feel like there's things we're trying to accomplish here, and there's a lot of great ideas and possibilities. And bringing in an electric vehicle and using the battery not just for transportation, I thought is a wonderful idea. And I'm just wondering, instead of getting shocked, when the power goes out, couldn't I just cut the power to my house and go from the battery, and the power wouldn't go on? And what I'm saying, just some kind of a relay system, so I wouldn't zap the poor guy on the line.
So the situation I saw used recently with the Ford Lightning was somebody already had a generator hookup, so that those protections are already in place near the electric panel. Because you have to do the same thing with battery or generator, that you can't have have to cut the power to flowing back to the grid. And in this case, they already had that set up, and it was just a matter of running the cable. Instead of plugging the generator into the power outlet near the transfer switch, they're plugging in the cable to the Ford Lightning and doing it that way. So I think if you have those protections set up, then it works. But
And it's there.
It's not.
I mean,
It's
the
not.
technology's there.
Right. It's just.
Okay.
It's not like right now you can go and take your car charger that's already been there for a couple of years and plug it into your Ford Lightning and have it work. There has to be protections in place.
The other thing I might add is if you have solar at your house and you have a battery, you can have it wired so that safely, in a power outage situation, your solar can replenish the battery. So that's a setup where the concern about an electrician, a linesman being injured has been worked out. And so it's feasible to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of options out there right now, especially when it comes to electrification, that could be good overall for many different instances. But you have the technology and safety, right? Keep in mind. Jesse, please.
So, I feel like I'm talking to a lot of people who have, they don't want to completely take down their house built in the 1800s, 1900s. They already have hot water baseboard heating or something, but they have an oil tank or a propane tank or an old boiler, and they want to electrify, but they don't fully trust heat pumps. Is there an electric boiler out there or a high efficiency boiler that we could point them to? And if so, what's the energy requirement, and how does that relate to a Tesla battery pack or battery wall? Is that uber technical and it's going to be a case by case basis, or are there any high level, generally speaking, there is this new technology, it's not geothermal, but it should incorporate well with your existing, hot water heating infrastructure? What do you say to that?
It's a big question. I can answer a little bit of it, but I saw was there a time, Andy, you were given a time signal? Is there he asked a big question. What do we want to do?
Well, I guess you can answer. Is there an electric option for
Yeah. And then you can jump
hot
into
water boiler?
So the short answer, and I'm going to lean on Andy too, but is there's no like drop-in replacement for a boiler. The boiler requires 160 to 180 degree water temperature generally to circulate. There are air-to-water heat pumps, but generally speaking, they need lower temperature distribution, like 100 degrees, 120. So a radiant floor or a low-temperature panel radiator. So that's kind of and heat pumps can run off of a battery, but your battery is you have to. They will, like anything running electrically, oven, something with a high draw is going to run that down quicker. Does that sort of briefly answer your question, or is there more pieces to that?
Evolving though, pretty quickly.
Yeah, but to heat up the water and get it pumped around, that's a lot of energy right there. So I don't think there's a good electrical.
So say someone's oil tank and boiler that's going out this year. They know they're going to have to invest in something before next winter. What do you point them to outside of just replacing their boiler?
An energy auditor. Start there, because you have to start with the loads on the house. And if that load on the house is high, you're gonna be hard pressed to do it that way. So you wanna optimize the combination of efficiency and electrification at the same time. So it does take some analysis, and yes, the equipment, there is equipment coming for this, but right now it's only available to make low temperature water. I bet in 2 or 3 years, we'll see these we'll see air to water heat pumps that will heat water up to 150. And now with a fair bit of just reducing the load, maybe 30% in the house, now you can run 150 degree water through what used to be running 180 and heat your house and keep it warm on the coldest day. But that technology is not here yet.
What about geothermal?
Also low temperature, 120. They operate efficiently at making 100 degree water. That's like radiant floor or big panel radiators, not hot water baseboard. Hot water baseboard takes hot water.
So that there's no real effective or efficient way to incorporate geothermal with an existing baseboard hot water.
Not unless you can cut the heat load in your house by a factor of 3, which can be done. I mean, we did it in this building, we cut it by a factor of 10, but it wasn't free.
All right, good points. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
If you have other questions, maybe they can talk afterwards. Do you want to put that on? And the EV chargers, which would go off there, which we were just talking about. All right, please. The science of heat pumps.
All right, take a deep breath. So when you get a liquid, molecules are kind of going like this in there. When they change to ice, that's it, they just vibrate a little bit. And when you evaporate them, all of a sudden they're going like this. Well, they're very high energy in that state. So when they go to that state, they got to get that energy somewhere. Nature always seeks equilibrium. So it pulls that heat from the surroundings into those high energy gas molecules now. And so it's cooling. How many of you have ever used a spray can and your finger gets cold? That's evaporative cooling. Have you put alcohol in the back of your hand? Evaporative cooling. It's a very efficient way to cool and absorb the heat from the surroundings. Now, it's same way around, you can reverse this. How many of you saw that little demo there where you saw that condensation that was actually warming up that little piece of paper? So same thing, when those molecules stop doing this and they start doing this in a liquid, they give off that energy as heat. So, ooh, cool.
Yeah, I'm not going to run that.
Okay. So this is basically the guts of a heat pump. There's a compressor, and a compressor is just like a little piston engine. You know, it's got a little piston that compresses that fluid and sends it out, and it sends it to the condenser. And how many of you felt the warm air coming out of that little mini fridge? That was the fan blowing over this condensing coil. So this vapor refrigerant comes in here and condenses, and when it condenses, it gives off heat. So the heat's being dumped out. Now we're in cooling mode right now. So it dumps that heat outside. That liquid then comes to the inside to this little expansion valve, which are showing as a pinch point in the pipe. It's a little tiny orifice, tiny little hole, and forcing that liquid through the hole, it's like doing the spray can. It goes to a vapor, and that vapor now is absorbing heat here and cooling this space. So if we blow air over this coil right here, it's going to cool the air. So now this is still vapor, so it goes back into here, and the little compressor piston going up and down keeps going and goes round and round and round. Now if you want to heat with this, you would pull the heat off of here. If you wanted to cool, you'd pull the cool off of here. Well, you can't really turn your house around to do that, when you change from heating to cooling. So these things have very clever little valves in this area here that will change this from being the condenser to being the evaporator, and change the evaporator to being the condenser. So I followed the plumbing once on here. It's kind of a mind bender. All these little valves in here. But it's pretty cool technology. And there's now what they would call cold climate heat pumps, which is what we use around here because we got a cold climate. And they'll run down to 20 below, some of them even 30 below. Below 30 below, the refrigerant characteristics tend to not work so well. So I put one of these little heat pumps in a house that I designed for a friend of mine. Small little house. It had one little wall mount heat pump in the living room, heated the whole house. Got to be 15 below. I called her up and said, Dee Dee, how's it going down there? She said, it's nice in here. So I went down and I brought that little point and shoot thermometer, and I went to the outdoor unit. The thing looks like a suitcase with a fan. And I was pulling the air in and look at it. Indeed, it's pulling in minus 15 air. And I go around the other side and look at where the air is blowing out. It's minus 25. Wow. So it's pulled 10 degrees out of minus 15 air. So this is the magic that these heat pumps have been doing. And they do some tricks in here, which I barely understand how they work, that allow it to work at these very cold temperatures.
There's always energy to be had. This is just a science of energy, grabbing it, transferring it. And even the coldest air has energy in there. It all depends on the limits of the refrigerant, right? The propylene that's in there.
It's yeah.
All right. Keep going, you're doing great.
So how many of you had a chance to look at the little mini fridge back here? Yeah, so here's a picture with, this is actually with that very infrared camera. And you can see it's blowing heat out here to make it cool in here. So this is like a heat pump, just like a fridge in your house is a heat pump. Everybody here has got a heat pump in their house. The only problem is it's one way. If this had a reversing valve in it, you could use it to heat this space in here. I doubt it would be an oven, but it would warm things.
All right. So, wait, we missed a bunch of slides.
You did?
Sorry. Oh, I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so why bother electrifying your home? Thank you. Save on energy, improve indoor air quality, increase your home value by being electric ready, protect home against extreme weather and power outages, and to reduce your carbon footprint. This is all from the Rocky Mountain Institute. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but again, doing your homework, thinking about it, how it is value. I was just telling some people about my solar panel setup, and my friends were still amazed. How much did you spend on those? But then I crunched down the numbers and the return on investment, and the fact that when I sell my place, a zero electric bill might be a really tasty little selling point for my house. So they're like, oh, that makes sense, because the cost of it was the cost of maybe a car. And they're like, oh, you could have bought a car for that. I was like, yeah, but 15 years down the road, I have a car that's worth $2,000 now. Whereas 15 years down the road, it's still producing energy for me, and it helps me keep paying off my electric bill. So it works out very well that way. So a couple of things, a couple of quick graphs. Looking at the cost for heat and hot water for different fuels. Oil versus heat pumps on CO2 emissions. You can kind of crunch the numbers and see there is an argument to be made for the monetary cost and definitely CO2 emissions. A couple of other things. Oh, this is where I wanted to go. So switching from gas to heat pump water heaters. Does anybody here have a heat pump water heater? Wow. Where's it all been? I've never, I don't know. I got a new water heater about 10 years ago. I didn't know if there was heat pump water heaters available then.
Not so much.
Yeah. So anyway, again, saves about 2/3 of the energy used. And going from gas stove to induction, that is really where the savings are. Like Andy was saying, all electric stoves, if they're resistance, about the same amount of draw, right? To boil water, to cook in the oven. But if you get to induction, it does really decrease the amount. By what factor did you say? I'm sorry.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
You know, a gas stove with a pot of water on it, it's like 30% efficient in getting the heat to the water. On electric stove, regular electric stove, it'll be similar to that. And the induction stove is more like 80 or 90% efficient in getting the heat into the water. It's amazing. It'll boil water faster than my little electric tea kettle.
And I'm upset I didn't do my homework. I decided to get away from gas for cooking about 4 years ago. And I got a resistance one where maybe if I would have done my homework, I would have gotten an induction stovetop. You know, I do like it. I'm glad I'm not using gas anymore. It's just, you know, you have to decide where your values are on that one. Sorry, please.
Yeah, so I got a call from a friend, and she was with somebody else, and my water heater's crapped out. What should I do? She had a gas water heater. Well, let's look at the cost. Well, the heat pump water heater cost, I think it was $1,700. The gas one was $900, but there was like $900 rebate on the heat pump. The heat pump water heater was cheaper than the gas water heater for replacement. Plus, it'll use much less energy. Plus, it'll dehumidify your basement a little bit.
And those are state incentives, or now federal incentives.
Yeah, in addition, yeah. Do you know how much they are on that?
It varies.
Yeah.
Applies from plants.
So definitely pays through the research. Looking at the cost of different fuels, you'll notice if we're looking at an electric heat pump, that's this purple one here. It starts about 2010. I guess that's when they were more widely used. And it stays relatively constant. When anything that's a fossil fuel-based one is definitely subject to market change much more radically than everything else. And the yellow on top is electric with resistance heat. So that's like the toaster ribbons, you know, that's the one people told me don't get a house that has that type of heat when I was looking to buy a house in Vermont 22 years ago. So yeah, but it's steady, but it's higher.
So that's the cost of the delivered heat, because the electricity per kilowatt hour costs you the same whether it's the heat pump or the resistant, but the heat pump you get 2.5 times the energy out of it.
Per BTU, delivered heat.
Yeah, thanks.
And again, this is the graph we looked at earlier, the cost per BTU or million BTUs heat delivered for the different things, different manners of doing it, and how much CO2 is emitted by doing it. All right, what can we do? What can states do to help electrify? What can utilities do to help? What can you do in your own home? These are all questions that are good questions, and asking how can we get more people to do it? If it's a good thing, how can we get more people to do it? So I'm just going to leave that out there right now. I don't know if anybody has any suggestions or what they heard about utility companies helping this out. Well, Brent alluded to a couple of things that Green Mountain Power could do, and getting a good contractor and doing your own home, thinking about what changes could you make. I'm thinking about my own house, and I know I need to change my electrical supply from the line because it's really old and beat up, and I need to get some new stuff coming into my house because I don't think putting an electric vehicle, it would be a tax on my system. So always thinking about it, but do your homework, please. All right, that leads us just about to the end. Does anybody have any questions right now that they'd like to ask? So I have one more favor to ask of you all, and thank you guys for being so great with doing all the activities here. Could you help us with our funders by doing an evaluation of this workshop? You can grab it with your camera. If you would do the evaluation, that way they get some information from you and help with our funding to do more of these in other communities.
Paper evaluation too?
Thanks everyone so much for coming today. I'd like to thank the Hartford Energy Committee, Hartford Town Hall. I'd like to thank Building Energy Company and Cover Energy Company for providing us with information, Efficiency Vermont, and V-Light for sponsoring these workshops. Thanks a lot. I hope you learned something today.